In construction, we often hear people use the term breaking ground. Well, that's what we're going to do today. Stay with me for just a few minutes and I'm going to show you what happens when the first and most critical trade shows up on your job site. It's common to hear contractors say that the foundation is the most important part of the house. If the footing is bad, that'll translate to the rest of the house. In today's episode, we're here to show you just how true that is. Tune in where we show you the very first step in your house taking shape. This is what the excavation should look like before you pour the actual footing. Where you see the wood, notice the level drops in 8-inch increments. This accommodates the change in the grade of the lot. These are called bulkheads. Each bulkhead and metal stake is set with laser precision. Notice the dirt's been moved away from the footing on the outside. This makes life a lot easier for the brick mason. Some of the dirt is intentionally left on the interior. When the brick mason finishes the interior piers, the dirt will be used to backfill. In some parts of the country, they use concrete forms right on top of the ground. However, in the southeast, footings are required to be below the surface. The North Carolina Building Code says that the bottom of the footing has to be 12 inches below the top of the ground to meet our requirements for the frost line. Rebar is commonly used in footings to add strength. Number 4 rebar is what you see in most residential applications. These next 3 pictures show you the phases of how rebar is set after excavation, then embedded in the concrete and extended for the brick mason to tie in. This bonds everything together from the bottom up and basically anchors the entire house to the footing. Now that we got the last little bit of dirt out, what do you say we pour some concrete? Let's go! Concrete is measured in cubic yards. 1 cubic yard is 3 foot wide by 3 foot high by 3 foot deep. The strength requirement is measured in PSI, or pound per square inch. For concrete not exposed to the weather, 2,500 PSI is usually what you see. There's an exception when it comes to garage floors because they're required to support vehicles. Garage slabs and exposed concrete generally require 3,000 PSI. Before any water is added to the concrete in the drum, the drier concrete is placed on the back side of the bulkheads and then packed in tight. Sometimes it can be really tough for a big concrete truck to navigate around the job site. Understanding how to direct the concrete truck is key. So after all the bulkheads are poured, we add several gallons of water to the concrete mixture in the drum. This makes the concrete a lot easier to work with. After that, we release a little of the concrete to make sure it has the appropriate slump. Slump is a measurement of the workability or the consistency of the concrete. Adding just the right amount of water to the mixture will help the concrete self-level and really have a good impact on the finished product. When things first get started, typically you have one man that will level the concrete, the next man goes behind him and preps the surface for the finish work. Now we're back to the bulkheads that we mentioned earlier in the show. This is a critical part of the process because if the concrete is too high at the bulkhead, the brick mason will have to chip out the high concrete before he can lay his block. Now it's time to finish or float the concrete. Notice the young man in the video is working smarter, not harder, by leaning on a rake that spans across the footing so he can get a better angle on the concrete. Floating the concrete out to the edge of the excavation is key. This ensures the drain tile will be installed on a nice level surface. You can see that these guys work further and further apart as the pour goes on. The man with the rake working the concrete is super critical to the guy that falls behind him with the finish work. There you have it, everybody. This is what a footing should look like. This video was particularly special to me because this trade was my first exposure to the construction industry. On top of that, there were 3 generations of footing guys in the video: my dad, my brother, and my son. It was great seeing those guys work together in harmony today, and we hope if you watched, you learned something from it. Thanks for tuning in on this episode of the Carolina Contractor Show.